Hello and welcome from Denmark, stage 3. We're almost halfway, the tour of Denmark. Start of today's stage will be in Vejen and the finish will be in Vejle. So, 209 kilometers today. It's the Queen stage, almost 2,000 meters of elevation, and a pretty punchy finale where we have seen races decided in recent years. But first, a little summary of what happened before today. Since we have 42 King of the Mountain points or King of the Hill points available today, there are quite a few riders interested in joining this breakaway to try and vie for these 42 points, including the man in the referee jersey, Niklas Pedersen, but also Wessel Krul and the man who was in the breakaway yesterday, Jeppe Askov. Those are the 3 riders in this breakaway of 7 who already have King of the Hills points. We have James Fouché here as well, the man from New Zealand, and Wessel Krul. The first sprint was at 187 kilometers at those points, and the seconds went to Fouché, Pedersen and Bloom, and then we had another one. We also had a little break. I haven't been able to figure out what actually was happening, but the race was paused, I think because of the state of the gravel sector, due to all the rain that has fallen. It looked rather bad. I think they have decided to neutralize it on the gravel sector. The second hill sprint, here we are, or the first hill sprint of the day actually, went to Askov. 12 points for him, 8 for Krul, and 4 for Pedersen, and that means that Wessel Krul, the Dutchman in the jersey of Human Powered Health, is now the virtual leader in that classification. The man who wears the jersey is in the peloton, and that is Frederik Jensen. Not in the breakaway, so it's all out of his control, and Wessel Krul is quite possibly the new King of the Mountains. But like I said, we've got 42 points, so with the 12 we just had, still another 30 to go, and the next one will be at 68 kilometers from the finish line. We just had our sprint that came after 100 kilometers into the stage, and as you can see, we've got 98 kilometers left to go. With, of course, Søren Werenskjold in the blue leaders jersey. We have Jakobsen at 6 seconds, Mats Pedersen at 18, Søren Kragh Andersen at 18, and Ridolfo, the Italian who was part of the breakaway on the opening day, is still in 5th place. He also wears the Best Young Rider jersey, the points jersey, of course, by Werenskjold, same amount of points as yesterday's stage winner Jakobsen, that jersey worn by Mats Pedersen, and like I said, our King of the Mountains, Frederik Jensen, is in the peloton. So, 209 kilometers today, a pretty challenging stage. But, Brian Smith, if I look at the profile, the first half of the race is, well, the first 2/3 of the race are actually the easiest part, and then it starts to get a bit rough with the climbs.
Yeah, we've got 2 first category climbs still to come, a second category, but I think more importantly, this kind of 13% up to the finishing line, it's going to suit a different rider than yesterday. Yesterday was a good final, won by Jakobsen, but I really do think that, you know, this has Skelmos written all over it. Of course, the general classification is quite tight. I think this man here has to maybe worry about Skelmos more than anybody else. He packs a good time trial. He's ridden magnificently over the last 2 days, first and second, rightly in that leader's jersey, but today will be another challenge. You noticed yesterday, and I think you called it out as well, Josie, that there was lack of teammates yesterday in the final. I think Sharmik was the only one.
Yeah, and that could be a problem as well today, especially on the challenging circuit that we have. We entered the circuit 50 kilometers, well, 60 kilometers from where we are now at 36 from the finish, and then our local lap is 9.8. So we're going to do it 3 times, and like I said, it's got a pretty punchy final 500 meters. The road book indicates it as 13% average. So yeah, it all depends on how you start the climb, and I think if it were up to Lidl Trek, you really have to try and eliminate Werenskjold before the last climb, because he can do that last climb. That's no problem. You have to do it in the lap before, or even on the first lap.
You really have to think about the overall more than anything else. I know that Jakobsen just was interested in stage wins. He's the closest contender, but I don't think he'll be up there in the general classification. I really do think that Mads Pedersen wants to try and win, but I think today with the Lidl Trek they have Squinch, Mads Pedersen and Skelmos. The thing with Mads Pedersen is, and I said it yesterday in the stage, he's got a target on his back every time he moves. Everybody's going with him. So, he's come close a few times. He's not kind of leaving it just to the final sprint. He is trying. In the first stage, he was quite unfortunate with 2 punctures in the run in towards the finishing circuit. Skelmos, I think, is the person that could really...
I think I lost you there, Brian.
You lost me?
No, there you are again. I lost you for a bit, but you were talking about Skelmos.
Yes, I think Skelmos is the perfect scenario for Lidl Trek. That's why they've got Julian Bernard on the front. They want to control this breakaway. The breakaway possibly, maybe it's not as strong as the breakaway we had yesterday. And all due respect to them, most of them well down in the general classification. The best is Jeppe Askov, the Danish rider riding for the Polish team, Mazowski. He's at 1 minute and 45 seconds. So I think for Uno X, their main job today is trying to keep a hold of that jersey. That's very important. Keep a hold of that jersey until that time trial. And if he's still in that lead, then he's got a very good chance of winning this general classification overall. But I think for Skelmos, he really has to attack these finishing circuits. And for me, he is the favourite for today's stage.
I see that Fabio Jakobsen wears the green jersey today, which is interesting because yesterday he was also the runner-up in the classification for the green jersey, and he decided to stick with his European Champions jersey. But there he is. Mads Pedersen is in his normal Lidl Trek outfit, and Fabio Jakobsen in the green jersey. Yeah, if we look at tomorrow, that's going to be, well, maybe the wind will play a really big role tomorrow, but normally it's going to be quite a straightforward sprint stage. So for the man in blue, Søren Werenskjold, it's all about staying in that jersey tomorrow. And then, yeah, may the best man win on Saturday. But I covered the Tour of Belgium or the Tour of Wallonia. I think it was the Tour of Belgium. And we also had a pretty challenging circuit in the Ardennes with a lot of elevation, and he came fourth there, Søren Werenskjold. So he has the skills, despite being one of the heavier riders out there. I think he can survive the circuit, but yeah, like you said, Brian, they have to make sure that he is isolated and then attack him early on, if it were up to Lidl Trek or Alpecin de Koning. There we have the boys in pink with EF Education. Mikkel Honoré on the attack yesterday. We also saw that crash from Michael Valgren. He's still in the peloton. He is okay. We did have some riders who had to abandon yesterday, but not as many as we had on the Thursday. So still, all in all, quite a big group as we gradually cruise along towards the town of Vejle. Only 25 kilometers ago, Brian, the gap was 4.5 minutes. So yeah, they probably kind of thought that was a bit too much.
There's still a long way to go. I think it's just a case of I think Uno X started today just leading as they have to do, and now Julian Bernard has been added to the chase, and that's the reason why it's come down, and they just want to leave it 2.5-3 minutes. I don't think they're too worried about it. It's a sizable group. You've got to remember the 7 riders next team here, and you really want to have numbers towards the end. And if you're Lidl Trek, you want to have Squinch, Skelmos and Mads Pedersen, all 3 of them up there towards the end, and hopefully not losing or probably trying to gain some time before the final couple of stages. So that just gives them kind of 4 different riders. And you mentioned yesterday about Mathieu van der Poel having one rider. That's quite common, just one rider to look after you throughout a race like Milan San Remo. Same in stage races, you have riders to kind of look after your kind of main principals, and then you've got the workhorses. So I think the gap is coming down just to kind of manage where they want to keep it 2.5 to 3 minutes, and they don't want to give themselves a hard time coming in towards the final laps.
It's Alfred Grenet at the front of the peloton, the youngster of the Uno X team. He is part of the development setup that they have, which is called the Uno X Dare development team. He's only 19, so this is his first year in the pro peloton. And now he gets to ride with the big boys, because you can, of course, swap your riders between your development team and your main team. Alfred Grenet, his best result as a junior was a second place in the E3 Saxo Bank Classic, so the junior version of that one. And this year he has done mostly races in Scandinavia, but it's also part of the Olympias Tour, which is one of the oldest bike races in the Netherlands, and especially suited for the under 23. Not uniquely anymore, but it is one of those races where you can spot the talent. But this year was a particularly nasty edition due to all the crashes and the rain, and we have some crashes here as well, with Logan Curry there on the deck. Mark Stewart involved as well for the Bolton Equities team, and it looks like the man there for Q36.5 is in a considerable amount of pain. We couldn't see who it was. He was rather tall, could be Ludvigsson, but we didn't see his bib number nor his face, so hard to ascertain who it was. See what happened there, Brian. Just missed the turn.
Yeah, it wasn't a kind of really hard turn. Maybe riders were moving up on the left-hand side, and they just kind of gently moved over and kind of squeezed riders over onto the hedge. Jack Bauer, it looks as if he's kind of the worst off for Q36.5. Yeah. They did get a nice landing, all of them, but for the Kiwi Jack Bauer, the fact that he's got something back his jacket there, maybe he was kind of moving back to go back to the team car, and riders are moving up, riders are moving back, then there was that kind of slight collision there.
Well, let's hope that he can get a new bike. Looks like the chain had dropped, but he needed a new bike. Just went off that little, in the field, and a soft landing for him after all. So hopefully everybody is okay. So we continue with the race, 90k to go. So it's just over 2 hours as we have another landmark today. And this is, I would assume, a telecommunications tower.
It's one of the highest points of Denmark.
It might be higher than the 173 meters we had yesterday, yeah. All in all, this is not 173, but never mind. A lot of explaining. Our highest point today is actually just 83 meters above sea level. Oh, another crash there.
Just a bit of gravel there, or just coming around that corner, just, the back wheel slid out. That's, we see it from time to time. It wasn't as if it was a kind of harsh corner, so possibly just hitting a little bit of gravel there.
Gerden Skjold, the man who is only just 23, 4 wins already this season. He's a former world champion as well in the time trial in the under 23 category. So we can expect something from him on Saturday. A very promising rider who can TT well. He is a good sprinter, as we've seen. And despite his build, Brian, he's very agile in the peloton. He really does well, despite being such a big lad.
I wouldn't say he's he's big. He makes it maybe looks bigger than a lot of riders round about him. He's not, bigly built. He's tall. When you look at his legs, he's quite kind of slim, although he carries that kind of strength and things like that. So, gone are the days when you look back at some of these old photographs and old movies and some of the Grand Tours where, they're climbing up these mountains in like 42.21, and, you used to have to heave yourself up there. And it's the same in my day. I started off cycling with 42.21 and then I went 42.23, then with 39 ring came in. Nowadays I'm riding about, I think, 36.32, and that was not even heard of back there. Yeah. It's when the inner ring gets very close to the sprockets at the back, and it's unbelievable the gears that they've got now. But back in the day, if you look at the physique of bike riders, it's gone from quite kind of muscular kind of road riders to, I say now, skinny freaks. There's just, in my day, my boy is 15. He's trying to kind of bulk. He plays rugby union, and he's trying to get the kilos on. I think he's up to about 77 kilos. I used to race at 68 kilos. There was nothing of my top body, and it was all glutes and legs and things like that, and that's what all bike riders were like. They were a bit heavier set. They're a bit more muscular. Nowadays, when you look at it, you look at Vingegaard and there's nothing of him. He's, as they say in Scotland, he's a bit of a skelf, and the amount of power.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, the amount of power that he produced in that time trial on the Tour was unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm of course the last person to say that somebody's big or heavy. Well, I can say it about myself, but I feel quite reluctant to say it about somebody else. This is the man who crashed. He's a local guy, William Blumer-Levy, and now returning to that first group. And from that helicopter shot, Brian, we also saw that our race leader, Bjørn Skjold, had to go for a little sanitary break, and a teammate stayed with him. And that's what we explained before.
Yeah, that's what we have to do. I just want to apologise to some of the viewers. I'm hearing some Danish commentary in my ears. I don't know if you're hearing it at home, but hopefully we'll get that sorted by our technical guys. I believe that someone has already messaged them. So if you're hearing it, we apologise for that.
Well, I did get Dutch on my earphone, but that is because the camera crew and the motorbike pilots here are Dutch and Belgian. But I didn't hear the Danish, but maybe I thought it was Dutch. Who knows?
Well, it seems to have stopped.
Julien Bernard, he's one of the veterans at Lidl Trek. They have announced so many new riders today. They even apologised today on their account formerly known as Twitter that there was not going to be an announcement about a new rider, but they'll be back to business tomorrow. And if I look at my inbox with all the press releases, it's a lot of Lidl Trek, and we do know, of course, that it's an international chain of supermarkets, and I would not be too amazed that they're also sourcing riders in the countries where they have a large presence, supermarket-wise.
100%. That's what happens. One of the teams that I rode for was Motorola, and Motorola wanted I think that was one of the first kind of most international teams in the Pro Peloton. You still look at some of the kind of traditional teams, up until I think Movistar kind of brought on board. They wanted to kind of modernise their approach. They brought on Alex Dowsett, and then they started looking at more international riders. And I think you do have a core. If a team comes from a certain part of the world, you do have kind of core influence. But nowadays, a lot of the teams are, especially World Tour teams, are getting more international. I think was it Katusha that went to the Tour de France one year with all Russian riders, and it didn't really kind of work for them. Good PR, but it didn't kind of really work for them. So, you know, Uno X was all predominantly Norwegians and some Danish riders. You know, be only a matter of time before they start looking at, you know, other nationalities. I think it's the only way you can do that, because if you're looking for specific riders and to bolster your squad with certain riders, I just don't think you've got, unless you've got hundreds and hundreds of pro bike riders in your country, it's always very difficult just to have your team full of, you know, riders from your own country. It can be done, of course, but, you know, Team Sky started predominantly with, you know, a lot of British riders, but they, as soon as, you know, they wanted to win, you know, multiple Grand Tours, and they started going really into the international market. I don't think it really matters nowadays, because communication, although saying that, I was out with a bunch of, I was heading into a roundabout this morning, and a bunch entered the roundabout at the same time, and I thought, I'll just tag on with these guys. So I turned round and asked if anybody spoke English or even a bit of French. No, they were all Spanish speaking. So I was just going out for a couple of hours at 9 o'clock, and I got to about an hour and a half, and we're heading in one direction. I thought, well, if I turn around now, it's 3 hours back. I said, how far are you riding? And we're doing the kind of signs, and I love all that. You know, I love. I'm not saying learning another culture, but that communication. I remember going to France and not being able to speak French, and how you try and communicate with people. And the group kind of took me under their wing, and, you know, we stopped at a coffee shop. We ended up, I got in about 12:30 or just after. That's 3.5 hours with a quick coffee stop and things like that, in 30 odd degrees. But they looked after me, and it was great. It was great. It was just a nice wee group riding it. They were clipping along at about 32 kilometres an hour, so, you know, it was just nice and easy, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But it's that communication. I'm getting into the middle of nowhere, and I'm wondering if I'll get back okay.
Well, that's why I have a bike computer with back to start. I was ride on my own because it's just a health hazard for everybody around me when I do turns. I once rode 100k with Marianne Vos, and we have these long river dikes here in the Netherlands. And on the long straights, I had no trouble following her, and we were just chatting along. But every time there was a turn, she was like 10, 50 meters ahead of me, and I had to basically interval back to her. So it was 100k, and up to this day, I think it's 5 years ago, something like that. Up to this day, that's still the highest suffer score that I have on Strava, trying to stay with Marianne Vos in corners. So it's better that I just ride alone.
No, I was quite fortunate to meet Marianne Vos when I brought her to Braveheart dinner, and I introduced her to whiskey. After that, she was dancing, but, you know, we had her as the star of the show with, you know, multiple pro riders there, and she couldn't quite believe it. And, you know, we stay in touch every now and again, but she really is, over the years, you know, I think she really is, you know, pound for pound, you know, the best bike rider, you know, across male and female. I think she is the best bike rider across all the different disciplines that she's used, and she's still up there. It's incredible career she's had.
Yeah, and you explained to me way back when I was still at Eurosport Netherlands and we met in the Tour of Turkey, that she got such a big round of applause because by then she had like 10 or 11 world titles. And when I watched the World Championships last weekend, and she was dropped quite early on, what was it called, Crows Road? People in the Netherlands tend to say, okay, well, her days are over. She didn't win a stage, she did Tour de France. She didn't do anything at the World Championships. Well, you said, well, at the Braveheart dinner where she attended, she was applauded for what she had achieved. And in the Netherlands, the kind of vibe is you're as good as your last race. And we don't really, I don't think we really have a culture of celebrating our champions. If Mathieu van der Poel doesn't become World Cyclocross champion again, or he loses Paris-Roubaix next year or doesn't win the Tour of Flanders, there will be people say, oh yeah, well, that was it. His best year was 2022. It's never going to be that again. It's really a real Protestant kind of way of looking at things.
How many times have people written off Mark Cavendish?
Many times, that's true.
Don't write Marianne Vos off.
No, and she still has I think she still has 2 years on her contract, just for the simple reason that she loves riding a bike. And imagine that you are a young rider who is 18, 19, 20 years old, and you can learn off Marianne Vos. That is absolutely amazing, to have a road captain, to have somebody on the bike with you in the race. But let's get back to this race. I still haven't found the answer to the possible cooperation between Lidl Trek and the Restaurant Suri Kalras team. But the man in our breakaway today, Oscar Bloem, he actually races one of the Madones that were used by the women's team last year. That is the blue and white scheme. And in the peloton, we have some riders on the red and white Madones that the team used last year. So I do assume there is something going on there, nothing sinister, but there's a cooperation going on there. Also because they have quite a big group of Danish riders and a Danish sports director.
See, we're getting some greetings from the local farmers. In other parts
Lovely.
of the world, the farmers are
Protesting.
protesting.
Yeah, we have big issues with the farmers at the moment, as does Belgium, by the way. Now let's get back to the racing here, with our breakaway cruising along to our next King of the Hills sprint that comes 12 kilometers from now. We're going to do it twice. It's called the Golfbakken, and yeah, it might actually be around a golf course, but we'll see if that is the case. That will be 12 kilometers from now, with our 7 leaders, including James Fouché, currently leading that breakaway for the Bolton Equities Black Spike team. I do agree that yesterday we had a breakaway that was, I think, a little bit stronger, especially with Mark Stewart there, Julius Johansson, but also the 18-year-old that we had in our breakaway yesterday, Henrik Pedersen. It's a name that you can remember. We did see quite a lot of Pedersens yesterday. Henrik Pedersen in the breakaway. We had, of course, Casper Pedersen doing a fantastic lead out for Fabio Jacobsen. MS Pedersen. We've got 6 in total, and also today we've got 2 Pedersens in our breakaway. So they're omnipresent, despite the fact that there's only 6 of them. But you have quite a common name, Brian. There must be quite a few of you out there if you Google your name.
What, Brian?
Brian Smith.
What, Brian's out there? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are part of Smith is part of a clan Chatton, which is a mix of clans, purely because, you know, there's blacksmiths, goldsmiths, silversmiths. Mm-hmm. I'm not rich, so I would class my family background as blacksmiths more than goldsmiths.
Here's the names again of our race leaders. Yeah, these 2 riders at the front. We have Jeppe Askov Pallesen, and on his wheel is Wessel Krul. These 2 riders are currently battling it out for the King of the Hills classification. There we have that wonderful paint scheme of the Trek Madone 2022 version. As we race to the town of Burkop. Our finish town is Violet. I couldn't find the absolute correct pronunciation, but I go with Violet. It's been a Finnish town for quite some time now, and it's also the birthplace of Tony Rominger, and we of course know Tony Rominger as being Swiss, but his mother was Danish, so he was born here in Denmark and went on to have quite a illustrious career back in the day when I started watching cycling in the 90s.
Yeah, Tony Rominger was my era. A little bit before, but I rode against him quite a few times. Quite a prolific stage race winner.
Julien Bernard, French rider of the Lidl Trek team. Absolute fantastic job he's doing today, keeping the breakaway at bay. 2 minutes 6 seconds at the moment. And that means that Uno-X can keep their powder dry for the moment, but they will have to go to work pretty soon. And like we saw yesterday, Anton Šármík was actually the only one staying with the race leader in that final after his teammates had done all the work before in the stage. And they're basically doing most of the work today together with Julien Bernard, the man who started with number 1. Winner last year of this stage and also the GC was Christophe Laporte, who is of course a little bit of an expert when it comes to uphill sprinting. He won the stage ahead of Magnus Sheffield. Sheffield had already won a stage and was in the leader's jersey, but it came down to the bonus seconds on this final stage. It was the 5th stage last year on the same kind of circuit that we have in Violet. And then Laporte won it in the end with 4 seconds on Sheffield. Schelmose was 3rd last year, 9 seconds down. And also in the top 10 we had Søren Kragh and Magnus Kort. So these riders are all here, the numbers 2, 3 and 4. But no Jumbo-Visma this year in this race. They were in the news yesterday, Brian. One of their riders who was part of the winning team in the Giro with Primož Roglič, Michael Hessmann, a rider from their own development setup, had an out-of-competition control in June and was caught with a diuretic. Can you explain what that means? Why is it banned? Why is it doping to have diuretics?
Diuretics, I assume it just as it says its name. It's a diuretic is about weight loss, I would think, potentially, but an out of competition. I think anything that aids, your kind of development, and I think the UCI, the governing body, have got diuretics on because some people take them to kind of lose that little bit of weight for competition. So it's a kind of aid to do that. So he had that in his system. He's been suspended by his team. We'll just have to kind of wait for kind of confirmation on that. Kind of surprised me a little bit. I know that a lot of riders. Look, in my career, I suffered from bulimia. So I know the hard times that a lot of these pro bike riders have. Especially, we just kind of touched about it. They're more muscular in my day and even before, but nowadays they have to be super skinny. And they get a lot of pressure to be at certain weights and things like that. So yeah, it's one of these things that's we'll wait what the wash up is of the what happens next. But yeah, diuretic is more for kind of weight loss than anything else.
Yeah, it's not exactly known which substance it was. It can also be to kind of get real doping products out of your system to kind of flush them out a little bit faster. But it's not a performance enhancement drug. It's not that you go faster if you take diuretics. No. But if you lose 2 kilos in fluids, you go up a hill faster. You might feel a bit doozy, but you go faster.
Yeah, it just helps that, like you say, it could be it has been used in the past as kind of masking agent, but I think more importantly it's kind of for that kind of weight loss more than anything.
If you look at the past, Frank Schleck actually had a suspension for a diuretic. Alexander Kolopnev, but he was acquitted by the CAS, the Court of Arbitration in Sports. We had Fran Ventoso, but his his suspension was also reversed. And the same goes for Iljo Kaiser, which was quite a really long battle to get him acquitted. And then he was not acquitted, and then he was acquitted, and then he had to be paid damages. It was a really complicated affair. And in the Netherlands, we had it in football, where we had the goalkeeper of Ajax, André Onana, who was caught with a substance called furosemide, and he said it was his wife's, and that he accidentally took it, the tablet that his wife was having on the dresser or on the basin in the bathroom. I have no idea. But he was suspended for 12 months and left the team. So it happens, but of course, yeah, being the team, Brian, and that has won both the Giro and the Tour de France, this is of course not a great situation for them.
No, not at all. You don't want anything like that on your team. You know, it's very difficult to get away with anything these days. That's why it surprises me that, you know, anybody would try anything.
It was the rider that he was caught like 5 years ago, and Stannard. He's now currently suspended by Alpecin de Koning, Robert Stannard. And it was something that they found 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's another strange one. Really strange one.
It was Stannard, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, Robert Stannard of Alpecin.
Yeah, not that I named somebody or shamed somebody. That was... but yeah, things are happening at the UCI HQ. Meanwhile, in our bike race, we have a gap that has come down to just 1.5 minutes at the moment, with 73 kilometers to go, meaning that our leaders, the 7 guys at the front, are losing time. They are approaching the first time up the Golfbakken. This is a school. Actually a free school. It's a education system that is, well, a bit long to explain, but we have exactly the same system in the Netherlands. But it's still holiday time. Now we have new teams at the front, and that might be the reason, Brian, that the gap is coming down so fast.
Yes, we just seen, you know, that wide road before we turned right. Quite often in the team meetings, you get given certain times where you have to be at the front. In a lot of the bigger races, you cannot just, right, it's coming up in a kilometre's time, I'll just move up. Sometimes in the Tour it takes 15, 20 kilometers. If you want the whole team at the front, you have to start looking at these places. So it was quite clear in that main road just before we turned right there that it was a key point for all the teams, and all the teams have the same information. So, you know, that's why we saw a bit of a battle, a bit of a race into that corner to get good position. We go onto the smaller roads, as we can see. So trying to kind of move up here. So you want to look after your kind of potential winner or your GC contender, take him towards the front, and that's what we've seen. And I think it was Soudal Quick-Step were the kind of best at doing that coming into this section. So yeah, there's different. Everybody has different ways of not naming these things, but some teams call it kind of red areas, red zones, or whatever it is. You have to be there. You know, there's, you know, amber as well. So the thing is, you have to be here at the right place. And it's Joseph Cherney of Soudal Quick-Step at the front here, helping his team. You know, he's one of these guys that motors day in, day out for the team. He's a little bit like Tim de Klerk. I think I'm saying a little bit, because I think Tim de Klerk stands on his own as the tractor. You know, he's the person that sits at the front for the longest. They seem to be saving him back a little bit, so he might be in a really good nick that they'll use him a little bit later on. But for the moment, they've got Cherney and Michael Morkov just behind, so they're taking control of the race in what they think is a kind of technical part of the course.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of pros from the Czech Republic, and since one of the I don't know if he's the owner, but the Bakula Foundation is most certainly a big contributor to the Soudal Quick-Step team, and having a Czech rider on board is always a prey. It's always nice. And Joseph Cherney, he's on the list to accompany Remco Evenepoel to the Vuelta. To do this kind of work, exactly. Our climb is coming up in a kilometre or so. It's called the Golfbakken. It's only 81 meters above sea level, and this is the fjord. That is the name giver of Vejle, also the river that goes through the town. which was at the basis of the large textile and cotton industry. And one of the most prominent companies in this town, Brian, is Stimorol, the chewing gum manufacturer.
Steaming roll.
Stimorol. I don't know if you have it in the UK, but it's,
I don't think
especially in the 90s, it was a pretty big brand. Stimorol. Stimorol. Maybe just not the chewing gum kind of guy.
I'm not. I grew up with, I think it was Wrigley's chewing gum. Then we had kind of Hubba Bubba, that type of stuff.
Oh, that pink stuff.
Yeah, but I'm not
sweet.
really. I'm not really a chewing gum person. You know, the taste and things that never last too long.
Here we are alongside the fjord for our climb. Hardly any wind to speak of today as we approach the fjord. This is going to be a little circuit. We will be back here in 10 kilometers, and this is the climb that we're talking about. A 180 degree and then just 1.5 kilometers of climbing. So to go back to the current score in the King of the Mountains classification, as we have that lovely view there. Wessel Krul at the moment is our virtual leader. And this is another first category climb. We're going to do it twice, so the riders in the breakaway will try everything to stay awake for another at least 15 kilometers to also catch the second time up this Golfbakken. The two riders already in trouble.
Wessel Krul was in the first break of this race in the first stage, and he's in it again today, and probably, you know, one of the harder stages. You could say if he doesn't get on the podium and get the jersey today, it will be Krul.
But there's more people in this breakaway, Brian, who've been on in the breakaway before. Niklas Pedersen was in the break on day one and today, and the same goes for Jeppe Askov Pallesen, the man currently leading. This is of course James Fouché, but the man in red there, the rider of the Mazovje Serge Polski team. He was also in the breakaway yesterday, picking up some points. So he's absolutely gunning for it, but look at that time difference. It's coming down really fast now. He is still 6 points behind Wessel Krul. This is a climb of the first category, so that means there's a 12, 8 and 4 points to get. He will get the 12 now. It's a lovely climb, by the way. He will get the 12 points on this one. But if Krul is the second one of the climb, he will still be the virtual leader. But since we don't have any images of that, we don't have a camera bike with the chasers.
Still 1 kilometre to go to the top. Still a long way. It's, you know, easy's off. Steeper parts were at the bottom. This is the peloton, of course. It was about position, just in case. You never know. It's one of these situations where if you don't fight to get to the front and it all kicks off and you're not there, then, you know, you should have been there. So it's a case of fight to get there just in case something happens. But for the moment, nothing really happening at the front of the peloton. On the bottom slopes of the climb, and the gap is going out a little bit now.
We're on the climb called the Golfbakken with our lone leader. This is Jeppe Askov Pallesen. He's a 26-year-old rider from Denmark, racing for a team from Poland. He was already part of the Tour of Denmark back in 2019, rode it in 21 and 22 as well. First year, he's part of this team from Poland called HRE Mazovje Sergej Polski. But previous years, he was part of the Kolo Quick team, who we just saw pass really, really fast, Niklas Pedersen.
I think he nipped him in the line. You're right about the the golf course, but how would you make that huge effort and then you just sit up and just cruise over the top? And I think he nicked that in the line.
Brutal. There is the sign, the blue sign. That is nasty. That is really nasty. Niklas Pedersen, the 30-year-old of the Kolo Quick team. Oh, that was okay. Well, that's something that you can just that you could have as a GIF, yeah, and learn from as well. But as a little learning experience, always right to the line. Back to the peloton, where we have Uno-X involved. Tom Scully is there for EF Education, and then the rest of the Uno-X team with Björn Skjold, with Anton Charmig there. We have Lidl Trek. Somebody said yesterday that the way I pronounce Trek is a little bit weird, but in the Netherlands we say Trek, so with quite a pronounced R, Trek. And Lidl is a German word, so I find it really difficult to switch between saying Lidl, Trek. So excuse me for that, but it's not a Spanish R. If you come from the north of the Netherlands, you have a pretty rolling R, as it's called. Pedersen, Askov, Pallesen, Mengel. So no points there for Wessel Krul, meaning that our man who was just beaten on the line is still our virtual leader. Is now our virtual leader in the King of the Hills classification.
He will not be thankful for this man here. I know it's only a couple of points, but you know, it's a lesson learned.
Yeah, but he's also part of that of it, because the score as it is right now, Askov has 28, Wessel Krul has 26, but the man who just overtook him on the line has got 26 as well. So we still have the same climb to go once more in 8 kilometers from now. And then there will be another 12, 8 and 4 points. So it's an interesting battle between these 3 riders in the break, although Wessel Krul was not in the picture anymore. So it looks like the 2 Danish riders, Niklas Pedersen of the Kolo Quick team and Jesper Askov Pallesen of the team in red. Martin Toft Madsen, a man who previously won a stage in the Tour of Denmark. He's been around for a while. I think he's one of the riders in the race with the most participations so far.
He's a bit of a time trial demon. I think from the past he used to have quite a curly moustache as well.
It's that guy. Yes, it is that guy. Yeah. And then he was at World Championships. He was there. And the rest of the year we never saw him.
Yeah, he's a bit of a specialist when it comes to that. Decent enough road rider, but time trial specialist, track, team pursuit, that sort of stuff. With a very curly moustache, but I didn't see his face there.
He's already 38. He's been around for a while indeed. Not at the World Championships this year, but still a 6th place at the National Championships in Denmark. Oh, that's a nice little stand there. You can see the flag, hardly any wind to speak of today. As the peloton gives our leaders a little bit more leeway. If I look at the picture that his team provided, Brian, of Martin Toff-Metsen, there was no moustache anymore.
Probably shaved it off because he thought it might make him look younger.
Well, that's one rage that, for me, can go in the bin as soon as possible. The return of the stash. Five kilometers from now, we have our second time up the climb to the golf course, the Golfbakken, with an interesting battle coming up between the two Danish riders when it comes to the points. Our last climb is at 38 kilometers. That is just before we hit the local circuit, and it might or might just not be that the peloton has caught them by then. A little bit of off-road action there by the guy from Green Project, Bardiani. It's young Alfred Grenet back at the front. We've introduced him to you before. He's a first-year rider and part of the Dare development team. Dare, of course, being the bike brand that Uno-X uses. New teams at the front are Lotto Destiny. An interesting name today might be Florian Vermeers, but also Brent van Moer has been pretty strong so far, especially with that time trial in mind on Saturday. Also moving up is Tjerni again, the man with number 31. We have Honoré there, Magnus Kort, the two Danes of EF Education, Tom Scully there, but still Alfred Grenet at the front, with Lasse Normandet following him.
Yeah, Honoré was there yesterday.
Yeah, he was there yesterday. A man who comes from the Quick Step team. But as you always say, Brian, he was there and thereabouts, but just not yet. Not just exactly to the line.
Yeah, I think today suits them a little bit better. Same with Magnus Kort as well. So they've got a couple of options for sure. So, but you know, the motivation is clear that the Danes, no matter what your team is, you know, you always want to kind of show well. Same wherever you go. You know, the Brits always show well in the Tour of Britain, so that's why we get many of the kind of breakaway riders are Danish. You know, the Danes want to kind of ride well in their home tour, so I'm expecting both of those riders to kind of feature today.
Like they had a nice little picnic there on the side of the road while the peloton passed. They will be back for another, and then all the way to Veje. We're slightly to the north of our finish town at the moment. We're doing a little bit of a circuit now alongside the fjords, and then we go to the town of Veje.
Kan ik wat doen? Zijn die mannen hier?
60.9 kilometers to go, 1 minute and 2 seconds. I would like to go back to the front now because they are approaching that climb. So off the main road at the fjords and then up the climb to the golf course again, as Lasse Normandet takes over. Looks like there might be some teams in this hotel as well. Some buses, some trucks on the parking there. Room prices tonight, Brian, go at €134.
That's not bad. Maybe we get some tonic wine there as well.
Well, everything better than a camper meal, isn't it? Here we are with our leaders again. We go off the main road, do that 180-degree turn. And then battle it out for the points. We have James Fouché here, Jeppe Askov Pallesen, Nicolai Pedersen, and with number 183, it's Nicolai Mengel. He doesn't have any points to speak of in the quest for the King of the Hills, but the three riders at the front do, and they're only 2 points apart. So with the 12, 8 and 4 that we have here, these are the riders to look out for. From our breakaway here we have Rasmus Pedersen and also Oscar Blume, and they are about to get caught by the peloton. Winning points for the King of the Hills classification, it's a tie. It's very important who took the points on the climbs of the first category, because that will be the deciding factor. So, almost caught by the peloton, Oscar Blume in blue, and in the Danish national colours, Rasmus Pedersen. We haven't seen Wessel Krul actually being caught by the peloton, so maybe he's somewhere in between. Maybe he's going to do what Nicolai Pedersen just did and have a sprint from the back, taking the 12 points.
Yeah, he hopes he can do that. I don't think it's going to happen, but you know, it looks as if we've got a bit of a two-horse race now between the rider from Mazaushi and Kolokwik. So you know, they'll be looking at each other. I think the rider from Kolokwik looks a little bit more punchy, like Nicholas Pedersen. So I think Askov, who's currently virtual leader of the competition, will have to kind of watch that. He cannot wait, because it looks as if it's quite flat as soon as we swing right towards the finish of the climb. So he might want to go a little bit sooner rather than waiting for the sprint.
Jacopo Mosca, Miss Pedersen there at the front of the peloton for the Lidl Trek team. We have Tom Squinch, Matthias Skelmose, and then everything went dark. Here we go. James Fouché at the front. He doesn't have any points to speak of for that King of the Hills classification, but the man in second position does. He's now at 28, and then the man in last position of this group, tightening his shoes, although you can become world champion with just one BOA if you want to. Tightening his shoes to get ready is Nicolai Pedersen. This is Martin Toft Madsen again at the back of the bunch, and here we go for the sprint. It is indicated in the road book at 57.4 kilometers, so that would mean that we still have 500 meters to go. Only 2 points between the man in red and the one in black and green. So the one winning this sprint is going to be the new virtual leader. We still have one to go. That is at 38 kilometers, but since the gap is down to 30 seconds, this breakaway might not make that. And with 30 seconds only, having the neutral car there is, yep, he's trying to move up, as is the camera bike. But we have to do that sprint first, and then the neutral car can move up. This is not a man who has too many points, but he's going for them anyways.
Normally you shouldn't be allowed to pass in the last kilometre of a sprint or a King of the Mountains, so
this is doubtful.
Yeah.
Oof, this is not great. The neutral service, of course, 20 seconds. The peloton is coming, and this road is just way too narrow to move up. And this is a call that the commissaire should have made when we were cruising alongside the fjord.
It was the motorbike commissaire that that made the call. If I was in neutral service, I wouldn't have done that. It's just getting in the way. But just behind, you can see the qualified rider Pedersen just taking the second place there. So it was tactical behind. But the rider was suffering a little bit. Nicholas Mengel of BHS has decided to take advantage.
So Niklas Ambi Pedersen is now our virtual leader in that classification. But it looks like the race is about to start. We still have 57k to go, 20k to the local circuit. Will they just give the breakaway a little bit more room now over the top of the climb, Brian? It sometimes happens when we still have, well, an hour and 20 minutes to go.
Possibly. It really depends on the riders at the front. It's Lido Trek at the moment, and if they're happy, just, you know, they know what they can sit at. There's no point. The gap is coming down to 33. I think it will go back over a minute, but they're not going to sit up. They'll just kind of keep on rolling through. It really depends on what's left in the legs of the riders in front. They have to get together as quick as possible now. I know that Mengel decided to have a crack there, but I think a long way to go. 56 kilometres on your own. I think the best idea would be to wait for the other three. It's the only chance they've got of, you know, staying out there a little bit longer. But I do believe this will go over a minute. But Lido Trek won't. They want to make it hard. They want to make it as hard as possible. Don't know if you noticed that yesterday, especially, there was only kind of one, maybe two riders for Uno X up there with Warren's Colt, and they'll realise that, they'll watch that. And today a little bit harder. So if they keep the pressure on all the climbs, especially when they come onto the circuit, then a lot of the Uno X riders might be in difficulty.
Well, the pace is up in our peloton. We still have a few riders just 30 seconds up the road. It's all about to start here in the Tour of Denmark. Some riders getting dropped there, including the man who was in the breakaway on the opening day, our first King of the Hills, Mats Østergaard. A little bit of a headwind here on this open stretches, but yeah, just 9 kilometers an hour, so not really that much to speak of. We are with Jacopo Mosca, followed by Dan Hole, tall guy from the Netherlands. Lotto Destiny moving up as well. They are here with Grignard, who was in that breakaway on the opening day. Josh Giddings there for the UK, Harry Sweeney, the Australian rider, and the three Belgians, Brent van Moer, Florian Vermeers and Axel Delis, who in his career has never done a stage or a bike race longer than 200 kilometers. Same part. Personally, I would just go and stand a little closer to the road to watch the bike riders go by. They seem comfortable there. A couple of years ago, when we just had that very wet Paris-Roubaix, this was actually the best place to be. There were people on the side of the road.
Denmark?
No, yeah, well, that was far away as well. But this kind of distance, people were completely soaked, and some of the team cars, it looked as if they just did it. But they also had no way to go. But the puddles were so deep that some people were absolutely soaked. That was the, what was it, October? Or, yeah, October Roubaix.
en close kan het even. Ja, dat gaat goed.
Just 53 kilometers to go, and the gap to our breakaway is down to just 28 seconds. Brian, it looks like we might have a very early final today.
Early final?
It starts very early.
Potentially. We've got this, we've done the 2 laps of the golf course climb there. We're now heading towards a second category climb, but I really do think that all the action will be in the final kind of 3 laps. I quite like having the 3 laps in the end. Not everybody does. Sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to manage. I think as a spectator, it's good to have. And I think having the laps at the end is quite good. You know, I know from races in the past it has to be long enough, because if there's a big breakaway, then it comes onto the circuit and, you know, kind of messes things up. But so far so good. But I think this is one of kind of the hardest of the laps, and you know, I am expecting a few more fireworks. We've had it on every finishing circuit so far in this Tour of Denmark, and today is going to be exactly the same, but I think a little bit more hotly contested. Definitely won't be a sprint finish. It could be in some sort of sprint, but I really do think that for me, Skelmos, even Mads Pedersen could be there. The way he's climbing at the moment, the form that he's got, he does look super strong.
If you're just joining us from the Vuelta a Burgos that just finished, welcome. This is the Tour of Denmark, stage 3. It's the longest stage of the 5 that we have. Brian Smith is here with me. My name is Jose Bain, and we had a breakaway today of 7 riders with James Fouché of the Bolton Equities Black Spoke team, the man from New Zealand, Wessel Krul, a Dutchman for Human Powered Health, and 5 riders from Denmark, Jeppe Askov Pallesen. We had Niklas Pedersen, Oscar Blum, Nicolai Mingle, and Rasmus Pedersen. The most hotly contested battle so far has been that of the King of the Hills. Out of our 4 climbs to date, we've done 3, and out of the 42 points that were on offer today, we have already done 36 points. And the man in red, and that is Jeppe Askov Pallesen, who was in the breakaway yesterday as well, is now our virtual leader, but not by much. So the battle is still on. No, Pedersen has it by 2 points. Niklas Pedersen has it by 2 points. That's the man on the Factor bike with 151, and Askov has a 32. The next climb comes up in 12 kilometers from now, but you can already see the man with 183, Nicolai Mingle, glancing over his shoulder. 12 seconds is the indicator, and that means that the peloton is coming closer, and that these riders most likely will not contest the last climb for points. We have seen a few minor crashes, including Jack Bauer, who had to get his bike out of a ditch, but we haven't had any reports of riders abandoning. At the front of the peloton, it was mostly UNO-X and young Alfred Grinet doing the work for, of course, Søren Werenskjold, but now we see more and more teams coming to the front, especially Lidl Trek, and Brian, you've explained it before. This is a stage of both Skelmose or Pedersen. I would like to say free Tom Squinch, because why not? But yeah, it's clear that he has a domestique role here, and that they want the Danes to go for the win here.
Yeah, when the push comes to the shove, Squinch is there. He's definitely got the form. He's definitely very capable of doing something in this race, and you always want to keep all your GC contenders up there. But for obvious reasons, Mads Pedersen and Skelmos are your picks. But we're coming up to you know, this tricky descent as well. We just saw James Shaw just looking after. He's done a lot of domestic duties today. He's another rider that could feature in a stage like this, but you can't have everybody, of course. You know, you have to have riders do the teamwork, and James Shaw has done a lot of kind of riding in the wind. You don't really see it, not riding at the front of the main peloton, but riding in the wind, looking after teammates. We don't often get to see that in a lot of races. The amount of work that's put in by a lot of these riders is unseen. We only see the riders at the front and of course the riders at the back. So there's been a lot of work done by a lot of these teammates just to make sure that the team leaders or the designated team leaders have got the easiest run towards the finishing line.
We're looking at the Veje Fjord right now as our 4 leaders are about to get caught. I'll give you the top 10 in the GC in this Queen stage. Søren Werenskjold wears the blue leader's jersey. He's got 6 seconds on yesterday's stage winner Fabio Jakobsen. Mess Pedersen and Søren Kragh are 18 seconds down. Filippo Ridolfo, the young Italian, wears the white jersey. He's currently in 5th place, 20 seconds down. And then we have a whole array of riders who are 22 seconds down as we go up the climb again. Including Skelmose, for example, in 12th place. We have Kort still quite close. Vito Braat, Tobias Andersen. A whole array of riders who are in that 22-second bracket. So the general classification still wide open, as Nicolai Mengel is trying to postpone the inevitable here, but he will be caught by the Lidl-Trek train. And now it's over for our breakaway riders. Over an hour of racing to go. Dan Hole at the front, adjusting his bike computer to see how many watts he is actually pushing right now.
I thought they may have let it go out, but Lidl-Trek have decided no. This is the same climb. They've already been over it twice. No points at the top this time. But they want to make it as hard as possible. Yesterday, Warren called it Charmig towards the front, but that's it. So, you know, they've been working hard. As we look from the helicopter, you can see gaps starting to appear. So this is not just a controlling pace. This is a pace that, you know, Dan Hole is riding to make it difficult. And just looking back there, you can see a race leader in the blue jersey with the yellow helmet, but just a little bit further back. Not too sure he's got too many teammates. I think Charmig is a little bit further back now. So I'm expecting something potentially on this time up. We do, however, have another ascent of this climb, so it's going to be a difficult final, definitely, for this race, and it's setting itself up nicely.
We're just 10 kilometers out from the from us entering the Finnish circuit. Dan Hole at the front, slowly getting used to the new Lidl-Trek outfit. Do still find the Trek Segafredo one a lot better, but getting more used to it and finding it a bit more appealing than before. This looks like a nice road to ride, just off the fjord. You can have a little break there on the side of the water, have your bar, a little bit of drink, and now a very early attack already there by Mess Pedersen. It's what you said, Brian, in the beginning. If you want to eliminate Werenskjold, you have to eliminate his team, isolate him, and do it very early.
Yeah, you have to. You can't, you know, it's not worked in the finishing circuit so far. You want to make it, you know, really difficult and selective. But what they have to watch is, you know, they can't, Skelmose and Squeens can't sit back. They have to follow the kind of counter attacks, because what you want to do is have Werenskjold in the back foot, which means that if you get Skelmose and Squeens there, then you know, they can counter attack, and you really have to force Werenskjold to ride. Obviously he just has to follow at the moment, but if someone else tries to go, but the trouble is Werenskjold is all day long is going to chase down Mads Pedersen, because he realises that he is a big danger.
I think the man from the Leopard team is Matthias Breinhoy. He is the local rider. I did recognize Alexander Kamp as well for Tudor, and the Lotto Destiny rider must be Brent van Moer. So I think that is the 5 riders we have here, but already glancing over their shoulder. Mess Pedersen is making it very clear that he wants to get rid of the man who has the nickname the Hippo of Mondal. But really, really great to see the final open up so early. 46 kilometers. Our breakaway of 7 has been caught, and now we already have our main protagonist up the road with local man, I think it's Matthias Breinhoy. We'll see his number coming up. A little bit of hesitation there. Verenskjold is looking at Pedersen and the other way around. And now it's up to Soudal Quickstep to repair the damages.
Mads Pedersen goes, the race leader, all over him. And that would be my tactic as well. But I think Ludo Trek have to look at this, you know, take a back step now and have a look at this. It's Mads Pedersen is just going to be followed by Warrenskjold. So I think Skelmos, and especially Squinch, has to come into play now.
Free Tom Squinch is my motto today. Let him have a stage win to, well, it's a bit of a reward for his fantastic Giro, where he was, of course, attacking left, right and centre, and his wonderful World Championships in Glasgow. But Mess Pedersen, this is absolutely wonderful. Over an hour of racing to go, and Skelmose has already come to the front as well. Looks like Søren Kragh is desperately trying to get a gel down. He probably didn't anticipate that he was already down to the gel phase at this point, and maybe just have solids. But yeah, I'm enjoying this, Brian.
Yeah, it's just the start of it. Still, quite a sizable group, but I think that Ludo Trek have to, try and just keep on jabbing. Pedersen has been followed by the race leader, so I think Skelmos and Squinch have to try and just follow these jabs. There's a few other teams getting involved now. Of course, I think that's Sharmik now. He won't do any work whatsoever, but
Fabio van der Bossen. We have a climb coming up that is in 5 kilometers from now. It's our final rated climb, but if we look in the road book, we can see that the Finnish circuit is quite lumpy as well. Around the fjords, we have a climb of 1.2 kilometers at 4%, one of 600 meters at 6.6%, and then our final 300 meters on the Kidderway is going to be 13%. And that is all the way to the finish line. More and more teams getting involved in the games right now. This is Filippo Magli. He had a top 10 place yesterday as well, the Italian of the Green Project. More riders of UNOX returning, but I think there's only 3 now in that first group.
Yeah, it's a big task for them today, especially today. But there's a lot of riders in this group now that might not be marked men. It's very difficult to mark everything out. There's another group just may get back on now. Tim de Klerk is still there for Soudal Quickstep, so I think it's a case of a lot of these riders kind of sitting back for the moment. Valgren and Magnus Cott there for EF Education Easy Post, but I think for UNOX they have to assume control of this race.
Flat tyre there for Niklas Larsen. There is Fabio Jakobsen in that green jersey. I don't expect him to play a role today for the stage win, Brian. But I could be proven wrong.
I think you said it yesterday, I said it the day before.
No, on day one. Day one, I said it.
I think he's got good form. It's clear that he has. Nice to see him up there. He's closing gaps the other day. And, yesterday was a good win. It was no real surprise. He's got some good legs and, he's managed to stay in this front group.
Well, it looks like things have calmed down just a little bit with Louis Bendixen at the front leading the peloton. And this is Niklas Lassen. He had a flat rear tire. Gets a new bike going very smooth. Bike computer back on it. Has got himself a bottle.
The only problem is that convoy is going to be very, very small because the group's all over the place, and it could be a case like what we saw in stage 1 with Mads Pedersen, that for that puncture victim there from Uno X, he might find it a little bit difficult to come back to the front group.
Yeah, and that is the kind of firepower that Søren Berenskjold, of course, would love to have by his side. There he is, the blue jersey. So Mosca moving back up to the front. What a lot of work he's done so far. Jacopo Mosca together with Julien Bernard, but especially in the finals, Mosca's been doing really, really well. So Louis Bendixen, the rider for Uno X. We have Mosca, Hole, Squinch and Pedersen. And Tim de Klerk, of course. I'm also interested to see, Brian, what you think of Søren Kragh Andersen. Is this man going for points for the mountain classification again, but now taking a little detour or something like that? Might be it's not the same guy, but that would be funny though.
Sometimes you get stuck, and I've actually seen a bit of kind of bunny hopping over kind of central reservations and things like that. I think in the past, Peter Sagan did it many years ago, jumped over and attacked and won. But he's back, the man that punctured, so that's a good ride. So it's another rider from Uno X, which is very, very important. Don't hang around the back. They have to get themselves together towards the front and show that kind of presence and dominance. But yeah, the riders on the left-hand side just getting stuck a little bit. They'll want to come over to the right-hand side as soon as possible.
And this is the moment. Our last climb is coming up to, well, it's coming up in a kilometre, and the top will be at 2 kilometres. I don't see any red jerseys of the man who is currently in second place. I do wonder if the man with number 151 is still there. We did see one Colo Quit rider up front. And if you can still pick up the points on that final climb with only one climb to go tomorrow. Well, no, 3 climbs of the second category, so that's 18 points tomorrow still to come. Or he just has to sit this one out and go again tomorrow, 3rd day in a row. Great camera work there on the descent up to our final categorized climb of the day. But as I explained before, on our 9.8 kilometer local lap, we have some serious punching.
Here we come. Here we go.
To go. It is the man in red.
Yep.
Is it the man in red? And yeah, it looks like both of them are still there. In red, Jeppe Askov Pallesen glancing over his shoulder. It's you again. Yeah, these guys, they were in the breakaway. And now they're going for these final points of the day. 500 meters to go. And it looks like Nicolai Pedersen is coming out on top here, picking up the last 6 points of the day. But to keep the battle alive, the man in red, Askov Pallesen, has to stay ahead of the peloton and quite possibly try again tomorrow, since by then the difference between these two will still only be 4 points.
Yeah, he has to try. He has to try. Looks as if he's drifting back a little bit, but I think, like you say, he has to try. He has to put an extra little spurt in here. and just try and kind of come around the Lido Trek riders and take that second place.
Well, those points are his. And now he's probably completely empty.
And I think the other rider is as well, because he's going to get no points.
So we're a kilometre out from our local circuit right now. This looks like a great place to go for a bike ride. Small climbs, not too difficult. Nice, good roads. And if you've got sunshine, even better. And it looks like and they also have good coffee in Denmark, I've been told.
You weren't saying that stage
coffee
one
culture.
when it was raining.
No, then I would have stayed at home and go on Swift or something. So a little bit of peace and quiet before we go on the local circuit. The first time we cross the finish line will be at 29 kilometers. Here we go. No points for Askov and 4 points for Nikolai Pedersen. Good result there for him. A fantastic day in the breakaway like he was on day one. And he is now our new leader with 40 points in that King of the Hills classification. Runner-up is Askov Pallesen with 32. And like I said, we have 3 more climbs to go, all second category tomorrow. So that's 18 points. So a nice lead of 8 points now for Nikolai Pedersen and the mountain jersey. Magnus Kort at the front there in the pink. Berenskjold still up there. But like you predicted, Brian, just one teammate with him.
Yeah, this looks very familiar. I think this is one of the drags on the circuit. So I think we've already kind of entered the circuit. So this is one of the drags that we've got. It goes over the top, and then we've got a couple of lumps before we get to the finishing line. So it's not going to be easy. This circuit never has been in the past. This is where a couple of years ago that Evenepoel just killed everybody.
Yes, he did, and won the GC. Last year, Christophe Laporte won this stage, and with the bonus seconds also took the GC. Evenepoel in 2021 also winning the general classification. Lasse Norman led in 2019. In 2018, Wout van Aert, although the circuit was slightly different then. 2017, Mess Pedersen. And 2016, Michael Valgren. And then we can go a whole way back because Veje is a staple on the course of the Tour of Denmark. And of course, last year, also the finish for stage 3, the start place of stage 3 to Sunderborg, and that stage was won by Dylan Groenewegen. It is the birthplace of Tony Rominger, we mentioned that before, but also of Matthias Breinhoy, the man of the Leopard team we just saw on the attack briefly. And I think he will try something again, racing on his home ground. Not a sign of a city just yet, Brian.
No, it won't be long. Up that drag there onto the small roads. It's not a huge place, of course, but I think I have a really nice crowd every year that comes here. Getting a really nice crowd at the finishing line, but we drop back in quite quickly into town, and then we go uphill again.
It's a town with about 50,000 inhabitants. Vejle. We're still on Jutland, by the way. In the province of Syd, Denmark, south of Denmark. We have a world famous mill that was built for the textiles industry that kind of ended in the 90s when the factories were closed. And it was first mentioned in the history books back in 1256 when they got their city rights from King Waldemar. And because it is on the Veje Fjord, it was part of the Hansa League, which is a league of cities in Germany, the Netherlands, and also Scandinavia trading. And the trade on the East Sea, so in Scandinavia, was actually quite profitable. Most people think it was the trading to Indonesia that made the Dutch so rich. But it was mostly the trading in timber or in whale products on the East Sea that was very profitable for the Dutch in the in the 16th and 17th century, thanks to the Hansa League. And now, Brian, and that would absolutely appeal to you, Veje is mostly known for its giant supermarket and that it's a prime location to go shopping. Not only in the supermarket, but also in giant shopping centres.
And that relates to me because
I don't know.
I don't do shopping.
I'm just trying to get you involved and make you laugh. That's always my goal.
I'm not a shopper. I'm not a shopper. When I go food shopping, I just buy so much food. I should go by a list and stick to it. The worst thing is, and especially when you're a bike rider, that most of the times you go shopping, you're hungry, and then you buy all this food. Yeah, you buy all this food. Always go shopping in a full stomach.
Yeah, that is the top tip for everybody around the world. Well, I love big supermarkets. I can actually spend hours in some of these big French supermarkets, completely getting lost in the cheese aisle. Well, it is Lidl Trek taking the race upon their shoulders. Jacopo Mosca still leading as we speak. The differences in the general classification are super small, although we did emphasize yesterday, Brian, that the bonus seconds with the first and second place by Werenskjold, these 18 seconds that he now has, can become very important. Tomorrow, I don't think there will be big differences, but the man in blue, he has to survive today and not lose.
We don't have that on every pole here, so I don't think there'll be huge differences. I think every second will count. I think if Werenskjold gets through today, not conceding any time, he puts himself right in a nice position, with the time trial in the final stage. But I think this is going to be a really aggressive ride in towards the finish for, especially over these last 3 laps for Lidl Trek.
2 kilometers to the finish line. Nice wide roads for that finale, but the road will be pretty steep in the final 350 meters. There goes one of the riders for Uno-X. The same goes for Jacopo Mosca. Job done, and now it's up to Dan Hole. Still 3 riders for Uno-X in that first group, but they gladly leave all the work to Lidl Trek. Here we go. Road rises. First time we cross the finish line is 29 kilometers to go. And if we look at the map of our local circuit, it's the final 300 meters that are going to be steep, but also this little one, and that is a 600 meter climb at 6% average.
Yeah, it comes onto the main road soon, big kind of dual carriageway, and then it kind of drops down a little bit, and then you've got that kind of quite a steep descent, quite a sharp right hand corner, and then it goes all the way up. You do a bit of a kind of dog leg up here, so it goes up this dual carriageway, down the other side, downhill, and then come back into town again, and it's a sharp right-hand corner. So you want really good position, and like you say, Josie, it's quite a steep nip up towards the top, but it's over the top of the climb. I think that's where the kind of damage can be done, because it's kind of falls flat all the way to the finish.
There is the turn. We can actually see where the riders are going, because also on the other side there is big groups of spectators coming out in the sunshine. We had a really wet first day here in the Tour of Denmark, but sunshine yesterday and sunshine today for the riders. This is our final kilometre. There is this. We don't have a big installation to indicate the final kilometre. And then the right-hand turn up to the Kiddervey. I don't see Werenskjold getting in a whole lot of trouble on this climb, Brian.
Not in the form he's got at the moment. Don't think so. I think Lido Trek have to use their team, because he is just following Mads Pedersen. Wherever Mads goes, the leader goes.
Well, here is Jakobsen. He will not be a factor today. He's got another shot at a stage win tomorrow. But this is our most difficult finish of the week. And now as the climb is over, like you explained, and then we got that false flat.
It's the
final
shimmy,
few hundred meters.
The left and the right. This is where it kind of drags up towards the finish here. So you've soon got another kind of chicane here, and you know, this is the part where you can do a lot of damage. Everybody's legs are kind of bursting a little bit because of the climb. Then you get this little bit of chicane in towards the finish. But Mads Pedersen, he's got his shadow behind him, gaps appearing kind of all over the place. And I really do think that Skelmos, they're squinched there. I think it really is splitting up. But who's going to keep the tempo up in the front group there?
Florian Vermeers is the rider for Lotto Destiny. This group is the one with Brent van Moer. And riders all over the place as we speak. Trying to move up, but yeah, they have their first recon of our finish climb. Alexander Kamp in this first group as well. Magnus Kort, Lucas Eriksson. Vermeers, Squinch. Of Pedersen, of course, and Skelmose. Nicola Conchi is the man for Alpecin de Koning, and Anton Charmich is coming to the rescue there for Søren Werenskjold.
I think Charmich is going to hang in a little bit by his facial expressions there, but you know, at least he's there. That's the important thing. He's made this split, and it does look as if they're starting to work. I'm not going to say that Werenskjold is isolated, but having both Mads Pedersen and Skelmos here, I think they would want Tom Squinch to be here as well. I think he's in that kind of second group with Soren Krauj just behind. But Kamp is riding well for Tudor in the black here. He is totally motivated by his home tour, former Danish champion, of course, but Werenskjold just has to be just a bit wise here, just kind of roll through, kind of sit on a bit. He doesn't need to be chasing anything. Everybody else needs time in him.
27 kilometers to go in the longest stage in the Tour of Denmark, and we are on the local circuit. And this is the first of 3 climbs. It's called the Høenskorve. It's 1.2 kilometers long, 6.4% average. Because Eriksson, another rider there for Tudor, who have a good ride so far. Some top 10 places with Sebastian Coulthard-Changizi as well. And of course, next year they have a big influx of talent coming up with the ultimate aim of getting a wild card. I think preferably for the Giro.
Talking about coming up, Tom Squinch trying to come across the gap now, which will give Lido Trek the 3-rider prominence in this front group.
Is that Pedersen again? Yes, he is doing it again. And now Werenskjold really has to think, what am I going to do? Am I going to follow each and every one of the attacks by Mads Pedersen, or do I have to leave 1 or 2?
Well, he's got his teammate there, Scharmik, so why not use your teammate while he's there? And, you know, that's what he's doing. Doesn't really matter if Mads Pedersen gets, 50 metres in front. I think Werenskjold has to just kind of watch and not kind of chase everything. He was shadowing Mads Pedersen the whole time there. So I think Mads Pedersen's ally now is Skelmos behind. Scharmik has to continue to keep this going. Werenskjold deciding to come across on his own, which I think maybe a little bit mistake. I think Scharmik just maybe had a little bit more to give there, but he doesn't want to take any chances. So it does look as if Lido Trek are starting to kind of work over a race leader now.
Lukas Eriksson and Mads Pedersen, the Swedish and a Danish rider, currently at the front. 25 kilometers. We've done that first of the 3 climbs on the lap, and now we stay on a little bit of a plateau before we dive down back to the fjord. The lap is 9.8 kilometers. Not a lot of wind to speak of today on these nice open stretches. It could be a factor, but there's hardly any. And this attack is neutralized by Werenskjold, and it looks like Skelmose was the next one going on the attack before we switch to the peloton. There it is. This is what Lido Trek have to do.
There. Yeah, that's what they have to do. 1-2 the whole time. Scharmik behind trying to come back. He needs to try, because all the time here you just see a reaction from a race leader. That's what they wanted. They prefer to have Squinch there. He was just about on when Mads Pedersen decided to go on the attack, but this is going to happen. This is the way the old 1-2 race leader is in front. He doesn't want Mads Pedersen or Skelmos to go down the roads. So, he's chosen pretty much all the time to follow Mads Pedersen. But this is, just classic tactical moves from Lido Trek.
And Werenskjold tempted to close the move himself.
Yeah, Mads will just go. You just have to continue hitting him over the top again. The longer he stays out there, but I would just ease back a little bit. Werenskjold is, his best interest is just leave him dangling there a little bit. Get any slipstream, just give him, the 10 metres here, which he's doing. That means that Mads Pedersen is not going to go on the attack straight away, because as soon as he's brought back, he'll go again. I also think that Lido Trek have to think about this now, because if they could get Skelmos and Mads Pedersen together, wow, that would be something. So maybe not just keep on the 1-2, maybe on the how of if Skelmos is in front and Mads Pedersen, or either Mads Pedersen in front, Skelmos can chip across to him. That would probably be, but I think that would come, possibly closer to the last lap.
Oh, interesting camera angle. We're going down really fast back towards the fjord.
Yeah, this is Scharmik and Squinch. Pedersen goes straight away, just straight away over the top, and Warren's goal just is, he's just looking, but fortunately, the others are up for this. The others want to try and kind of win the stage. So unfortunately for Mads Pedersen, flick of the elbow from Magnus Cort wants Eriksson to come through. So it does look as if, Warren's goal is starting to show that, all these efforts are starting to tell. But I think Skelmos, if he can recover a little bit now from that attack, and on the climb up towards the finish, if he can go over to Mads Pedersen, then that would be the perfect scenario.
This is a gap. This is a gap there by Mads Pedersen, and not a lot of reaction there from the chasers. The chasers being, Skelmose, not a chaser, but in that group. We have Nicolas Conchi there, we have Magnus Cort, we have Florian Vermeers, Alexander Kamp, Lucas Eriksson, 2 riders for Tudor. I think that is the composition of that team. And of course our race leader, Søren Wierenskjold.
I just don't think that, the thinking behind, Wierenskjold is, he has to ride a little bit, but, the others as well. It's in their best interest to just kind of roll through. Skelmos is in a perfect position because he doesn't have to do anything. He's got Mads Pedersen in front at 10 seconds. That's perfect going on to this climb. I really do think that the tactic now for Ludo Trek is to try and fire Skelmos across this gap, because 2 riders against our race leader is going to be hard to be brought back. But I just think that there's a lot of tired legs now. This is a long stage. It's not easy at all, but I think this is a hard ride for Mads Pedersen. We know he's got the form, but I think on his own it's still going to be very difficult. But let's see what Skelmos decides to do.
I think the sports director here is Kim Andersen. And this is our final kilometre. The last victory of Pedersen was, of course, that Tour de France stage. 4th at the World Championships. Great ride. Would have deserved the medal, but so did the other 3. If there was a championship where you could award 4 medals, it was the Glasgow Worlds, but also it shows that after such a long race, a sprint is never a normal sprint. Pogačar taking on Pedersen in that sprint for bronze. This is a rider lapped, so he has to wait on the side of the road before the first group passes, but he still has to complete the lap he has now lost. So you still have to complete all 209 kilometers in order to be able to start tomorrow. Well, Wierenskjold has to leave it to Eriksson. Tudor Pro Cycling, of course, 2 riders in that group. Wierenskjold himself not at the front. Yeah, people love to see it, of course. Mads Pedersen, the former world champion for 2018, 2019. Well, the Harrogate world champion. Absolutely horrible day in the rain there in Yorkshire.
Peloton not that far behind, so I think that, this time up to the finish, if Skelmos has got the legs, he's been sat on the wheels for a little bit. I think definitely a lot of kind of tired legs. That's the peloton on the left-hand side, so they're not that far behind. But I think if I was in a team car, I would be trying to encourage Skelmos to see if he can try and kind of jump across on this lap, because I think the 2 of them in the front, for me, that could be race over.
Final 20 kilometers in the Queen stage of the Tour of Denmark. This is the Kiddesweg, and each and every one of these people on the side of the road are cheering on Mads Pedersen. He's got 16 seconds on this group with our race leader Søren Wierenskjold. We have Magnus Cort here, Matthias Skelmose, Alexander Kamp and Lucas Eriksson of the Tudor Pro Cycling team, and Nicolas Conchi of Alpecin de Koning. Those are our chasers, but so far the gap is getting bigger for Mads Pedersen. But I'm with you, Brian. 20k is still a long way to go on your own.
Yeah, these guys aren't closing the gap. Mads Pedersen has given absolutely everything. It would be a little bit easier if he was joined by his teammate, but Skelmos is not trying. He's kind of sitting back. Maybe he's waiting for the final lap. But I can't see Mads Pedersen getting too much of a gap. I'd like to see, you know, what's happening at the front of the peloton, because they aren't that far away either. But we know that Mads Pedersen, he's been at this pretty much from the start. But that was a great opportunity for Skelmos. You know, 14, 15 seconds to chip across there. Maybe he doesn't, maybe I'm doing an injustice, maybe he doesn't have the legs to go across, but we know that Mads Pedersen does have the legs. You know, can he hang on? I think there's a lot of tired legs behind. They're kind of leaning on Warenscold. Here's the race leader. But let's see what happens over the final 2 laps now.
Yeah, I hope the TV director stays with the finish line for a little bit so that we can actually see the differences. Now it's up to Ericsson again. Florian Vermeers also in this group. I didn't mention him before. Then it's Magnus Kort, Nicola Kunshi, Søren Werenskjold and Alexander Kamp. What is Werenskjold doing? Oh, there he is. Well, he seems to be staying with the Skelmos. Yeah.
Josie, but it's in the best interest of everybody to ride, because at the moment Mads Pedersen is on his way to winning the stage.
On
so
that,
it's in the best interest of everybody in that group behind, because they're not far in front of the peloton behind. So, you know, they're going to finish. By doing it right today, you're going to put yourself in a good position to finish top 10 in this race. But it's not about top 10; it's about trying to win the stage as well. Maybe trying to take the leader's jersey. So it's in the best interest of everybody behind just to roll through. The leader has to roll through, but just keep on rolling through. Forget about Skelmos. I still think that Skelmos should have maybe tried to go across his race leader. Maybe he's waiting to maybe the next drag. Or definitely the penultimate, but just look at that peloton behind. They aren't that far, so it is in the best interest of everybody in this group here of 7 riders just to continue to ride, because they're in a good position at the moment. They don't want to be caught by the peloton.
No, and how many fresh legs will there be in the peloton actually? Because this is a 209-kilometer stage. We've got 2,000 meters of elevation. The final start at 50k out from the line. I wonder if Werenskjold can actually still have teammates in that chasing group who can do anything for him. Anton Charmik tried, but he did a little bit of work and then it was over.
They'll be able to do something. I think there'll be a couple of teammates. I just don't understand the why we're watching the footage. It's Michael Morkov. I know he's a local hero, but let's see what skill. He's been sat on the wheel for an amount of time. He's looked behind. You can see the peloton not that far behind him. Surely he has to try something, even in this next drag up towards the top of it. He needs to try, because Mads is just hanging out there at 14 seconds.
Yeah, the gap is not really getting bigger, but it's also not getting smaller. Now it's up to Alexander Kamp at the front. This is a deceptive image. It looks like he is losing ground.
Yeah, Magnus Scott is trying here for EF Education Easy Post. Maybe if he kind of closes the gap a little bit, Kamp going after him, Skelmos has to react, which he does. But just go straight over the top. If you have the legs, go straight over the top. Go to your team, your team member, and ride with them. Oh, wow, it's cold. Sorry.
It looks like he has a flat. Oh, this is not the way that you want this to be decided. But this is a flat tire. Our race leader and the team car will be way, way back, because the peloton is quite close. There's not even a neutral service car there. And this is absolutely devastating there for Søren Werenskjold, our race leader, with a mechanical problem. Looks like a rear flat there for him.
I think he was struggling anyway, but you don't like to see that at all. Not at all. Just wondering what... Maybe Skelmos doesn't have the legs. This is a perfect opportunity. Just try and chip across to your team leader. I do believe that the two of them get together, then, that could be race over.
This is devastating for the 23-year-old from Mondal in Norway. There is a team car. Oh, that's pretty fast. And now it's about limiting your losses. We have Magnus Kort, Alexander Kamp there. Berenskjold getting a new bike and some support from the car, hopefully, to get back.
Surely if he had any teammates, I'm pretty sure that Sharmik was in that bunch, you know, that just passed as well. So he should have at least one teammate. Don't know how much he's got left in the legs though.
Yeah,
I think definitely, as you say, if we get off this climb on this descent, Mads Pedersen looking back here. Skelmos is a pretty easy ride, the Danish champion. I think this time up the main climb, he really has to join Mads Pedersen because it's still in the balance here. Kamp and Magnus Kort have still got a bit in the legs and potentially could bring Mads Pedersen back.
Alexander Kamp, Magnus Kort, Matthias Skelmose is that little group of three. And then we have Vermeers and Conchi a little bit further back together with the Swedish national champion Lukas Eriksson.
Because at this stage, Jose, if Mads Pedersen hanging out there, if he's brought back and Skelmos goes, then, you know, Lado Trek have got one rider. You know, one rider could possibly go and take the stage, maybe the leader's jersey in his prime position to take the overall. But if Skelmos was to join Mads Pedersen, I do believe that would be first and second in the stage. And you know, it's all about making sure that you know, you have, you know, riders up there in the general classification, because you never know what's going to happen. We just look at what's happened to Wannesgold now.
Final 15 kilometers and the situation has changed completely with that rear flat tire for Søren Berenskjold. We still have Mads Pedersen in the lead. He's being chased by Alexander Kamp, Magnus Kort, and his teammate Matthias Skelmose is there as well. And our third group up the road with Lukas Eriksson, Nicola Conchi and Florian Vermeers. The peloton, they're not really that far back, and behind the peloton is, well, as far as we know, still Søren Berenskjold. We'll see that once we cross the finish line at 9.8 kilometers, exactly how far back he is. And if he can overcome that distance in a time trial, it's not a long one on Saturday. It's only 16.1 kilometers. So really hard when a race gets decided by a puncture, just like we saw, of course, in Paris-Roubaix for men with Wout van Aert.
I think you've mentioned it, Josie. The key man is Warrenskov. Where is he? That's the question. Why isn't there a camera on him? He's the race leader. We saw it with Mads Pedersen in the first stage. They kind of followed him, and you know, we saw him back in the main group. So the race leader, as we see these two groups joining together now, there will be a little bit of an ease. So the gap will go up to Mads Pedersen a little bit. Skelmos is on the radio saying that they're kind of back together. But where is this peloton behind? Is the race leader got any teammates to be able to help him? You know, can he come back and, you know, the penultimate climb up towards the finish? Saying 13 seconds.
Yeah, chase 2. But what is chase 2? Is that the peloton? Are we still looking at the two groups, chase 1 and chase 2?
So they're together now, by the sound of things, at 7 seconds. So the 12 seconds would be back to the chase group, which would be some riders from that kind of original peloton behind.
Well, we don't have any cameras on them. We have one on Mads Pedersen, who is on his way to the second climb on our local lap. It's a lap that's been used quite often before.
I think you've just seen a commissaire there in neutral service, just possibly waiting for this group now. So maybe that's
much more than 7 seconds.
Yeah, maybe they're, you know, a little bit more in front. We'll see from this shot. Yep, they are a little bit more in front of the remnants of the peloton. So it does look as if the commissaire and the neutral service are now dropping behind this group. A lot of looking behind here from Mads, but he's just uncertain. This is a hard ride. He is doing it the hard way. I really do think that if Skelmos has got the legs, go across to him. I think it's more. It's about 10, 15 seconds. Yeah, but he's been sat on this group behind. They're not getting any closer. It'll make it a hell of a lot easier for Mads Pedersen if he's accompanied by his own teammate. I know you don't normally chase your teammates, but in this instance, I think it could be in the best interest.
Pedersen won in Vejle back in 2017, so he has been here before. I don't know if the circuit was the same as it was. I don't have any profile of that race, but it was in a sprint. It was a sprint with Michael Valgren that day. And it was also the year that Mads Pedersen won the overall in the Tour of Denmark with 15 seconds on Michael Valgren. And that was in 2017, so then he was 21. Still awfully young. And one of his first big wins. This is our 180-degree turn, so maybe we can have a little bit of an indication, looking back, how far back the groups are. Where is the peloton? Where is our race leader?
Well, look at it here. It's saying 22 seconds. This is the group here. Just wait to the peloton. Just looking back now on the left. Peloton just behind. If I was Skelmos, I'd try this last time. That group are just behind. It's easier. What happens if Mads Pedersen is a puncture tomorrow? You know, it's better to be there. This is too close for comfort, in my mind. So, you know, Skelmos looks to the left. He'll see the peloton. His teammates in front. Ideally, they finish first and second in the stage, and they have first and second in the general classification. That would be a perfect scenario.
Penultimate time up the Gidevej for Mads Pedersen. Look at all these people there cheering him on. They've got the bucket heads of the main sponsor here, the PostNord, the postal company. But I would like to glance over his shoulder and have a little bit better overview of where we are standing, and whether Werenskjold is actually in that peloton. Is he behind it? Is he? I don't know. So hopefully when we cross the finish line, we'll get an overview.
I agree with you. It's pretty poor that we've not even seen the race leader since he punctured and get pushed back in the race.
Our chasers going really deep here. But if that is 30 seconds, and it might as well be, this is looking very promising there for Mads Pedersen. But Brian Smith is of the theory of not to put all your eggs in one basket and to go with a two-pronged attack of the Lidl track team.
I would, because you don't risk anything. And he's going now. Skelmos is going now for the first time. He needs to camp. He needs to keep the pressure on. Just 100% here. If he can join Pedersen, then it's game over. I said this all along, and I think a little bit too late, but let's see what he can do up through the finish. I did say the first time up here, the damage can be done over the top of this climb. When you've got big lactic legs, you know, you can keep the pressure on. That's where to do it. And I think if Mads knows that he's coming up, then he may ease a little bit, but Skelmos has to distance the others and try and get as close to Mads Pedersen as possible. Look how close the peloton are behind.
Well, there is, of course, a neutral service car and the commissaires behind Pedersen, so the gap must be a little bit more than 30 seconds.
He's distanced now, the group, which is a good thing.
20.
So,
it's 20.
You know, 15 seconds behind across the line. Mads Pedersen can't ease up at all. It's up to Skelmos to go across to him.
I don't see a blue jersey in this group. We do have Santa. There he is. He is in that group with Tom Squinch, so that is a group that is just ahead of what's left of the peloton. 40 seconds down for Søren Werenskjold, 40 seconds on Mads Pedersen. If he rides on fire like Mads Pedersen did after his mechanicals on the opening day, who knows what he can still recoup, as I hope there's no train coming. Nope.
Yeah.
Somebody with some cowbells there and the red lights.
Shamik there, so his day's done. But Mads Pedersen just having a look there. He knows he can't ease up. He has to keep the throttle down. It's up to now Skelmos to come across to him. I think this next drag could be the telling point now. But for Mads Pedersen, he needs to keep totally committed to this one. It's now down to Skelmos to go across to his leader. When I say his leader, dual leader.
Exactly. So we saw that Werenskjold was in a group there with Tom Squinch, about 40 seconds down. So that would be group number 3. I would say that group number 3 is the group with Alexander Kamp. Lucas Ericsson already dropping back to that group. But it's a little bit unclear what the situation is. We do have Mads Pedersen at the front. Skelmose following closely. He's glancing over his shoulder. He's probably heard through the radio that his teammate is coming. And then we had what's left of the chasing group. But Ericsson has already dropped from that group.
So the thing is, Josie, it's still close. It's still very close. He cannot.
Still possible.
He's monitoring the situation. He knows, but he cannot just sit up and wait. He wants to go over the perfect scenario would be Skelmos joins him over the top of this drag here. Can't understand. I know it's Søren Kragh. Can't understand why the TV producer is going back to these riders crossing the line. So this looks as if perfect scenario, just over the top of the climb, full throttle, 2 teammates, totally commit yourself, first and second in the stage, first and second in general classification. This could be game over for everybody else.
So here we go. The Danish national champion has joined Mads Pedersen.
Well done, Mads.
This is an SD Works kind of situation where they don't only win races, but just go a 1-2 at it. Here are our chasers, Alexander Kamp, Florian Vermeers, Nicolas Conchi and Magnus Kort.
And a group of riders that have been stopped on the circuit to let them pass, which is fair. Clean road, clean racing. So that perfect scenario has just been played out in front of us. So anybody watching at home, it's okay your teammate is in front, but if you've got a free ride behind and the bunch is getting close, and you don't want a Warren's called incident where if Mads Pedersen went on, take the leader's jersey, won the stage, then you have a puncture and it's all your eggs in one basket. So now Lidl Trek have got they're in the driving seat to win this year's race. Perfect scenario for them.
With their 2 Danes as well.
Who is going to be Dane of the Day though?
Dane of the Day is always a difficult title. And when it comes to the time trial that we have, both are quite evenly matched. I think that Pedersen has more of the raw power. It's a 16-kilometer time trial with 40 meters of elevation, so completely pan flat. But may the best win on that day.
Yeah, what will happen now is they want to finish together. I think Mads Pedersen really deserves the stage. So let's see what happens. For being a national champion, it'd be great for Skelmos to win here, but I think the most important thing is give 100%. That's what happens when you're with a teammate in front. 100%. These guys are now thinking, well, I'm not dragging this guy, and he's not dragging me, and start to look at each other. So these guys will give 100% for each other, stay together on the climb, come across the finishing line on the same time. It's who's going to take the stage. You would think Mads Pedersen deserves it, but the Danish champion, come on, you know, in the Tour of Denmark. That's perfect scenario. Anyway, both of them are gaining time, and everybody else, road stage tomorrow, time trial, it's a great situation. And you have to say that Lido Trek have, I know it's not the best field, but Lido Trek have played a blinder here, and they have done a lot of riding in this race. And Mads Pedersen has never been anywhere, you know, away from the front of the race as well.
True. Final 5 kilometers of this exciting third stage of the Tour of Denmark, and we are left with 2 riders of the same team at the front. Mads Pedersen, who initiated this attack quite some time ago. It was a really early attack, even before we went onto the Finnish circuit, and he just got joined by his teammate Matthias Skelmose. These are the 4 chasers, with in first place Conchi, followed by Magnus Kort, Florian Vermeers, and in last place it's Alexander Kamp. Sadly, our race leader Søren Werenskjold suffered a flat tire and is about 50 seconds back. We don't know exactly what the time difference is, but we do know that we have 2 teammates at the front, and then it's always an interesting moment. What are they going to do in terms of who wins the stage and who is our new leader? If we look at the GC of these 2 guys, we do know that Mads Pedersen has 4 seconds on Skelmose in the GC.
They finish together and Skelmose wins. It's equal in time, but you know, it's they'll have to make this call. But it's clear that I think if it was an out-and-out battle, I think Skelmose has had the easier ride so far, and it'll really kind of suit him. I think at the start of the day, I said that Skelmose is probably the man to beat today, but you never discount Mads Pedersen in the form he's got at the moment. So I think they'll just want to go all the way to the line, keep, you know, both of them together, but I think it's their decision on who's going to win the stage.
That is quite an interesting paint job that Alexander Kamp has on his BMC. But maybe more about that later. We go into the final 3 kilometers. If they finish in the same time and Skelmose wins ahead of Pedersen, Pedersen still gets the leader's jersey on countback.
Yes, because of the stage places.
Yep. There was a 5th and a 3rd place for Mads Pedersen, and then possibly a 2nd place. And on the opening stage, it was Skelmose losing a few positions on his teammate with a 19th place. So on countback, but yeah, it's a pretty steep hill. Pedersen, he's already given a lot, and it looks like he's going all out for his teammate right now.
You have to. If this was 2 separate teams, they would be saving that little bit for the finish, the climb. But because you're with a teammate, you give absolutely everything. They're communicating, they want to stay together, and that's the important thing. When you're here with a teammate, just look, we're just going all in. I'm not going to drop you, you don't drop me, we'll stay together. And it looks as if it's already been planned.
Well, you can plan this on the drawing table, but you still have to execute it.
Yeah, they just, together, they want to gain as much time in every one of their rivals. And, you know, you never know what's going to happen in a race. So for them, you know, to finish 40 seconds in front rather than 20 seconds in front is, you know, better situation. So, you know, with the time bonuses as well, they want to gain as much time as possible.
Yeah, and at this point, it might as well be up to 40 seconds on the competition, and that is these 4 riders that we now have chasing. So it's looking really, really good for Lidl Trek.
And the question is, Josie, what do the fans want? What do the crowd want?
I think
this is a tough decision, this one, because Mads is he's a heel,
crowd favourite.
Right?
Yeah,
but
he's a crowd favourite.
Danish champion, Skelmose.
Yeah, most definitely. And we might have a SD Worx Strade Bianche kind of mix-up. But I do feel that Skelmose is the stronger one on the Kidderway on that super steep final straight final climb up towards the finish line. You can just see the Ford chasers there on the other side of the road as they are about to leave the main road here. Lots of people here in Violet, just 50,000 people, but many have come out to watch the racing. These are the riders who were beaten with Alexander Kamp, Nicolas Conchi, Florian Vermeers and Magnus Kort. 32 seconds is a pretty good estimate. So we go back to the lead off the main road. And here we go. This is the Kidderway. Skelmose in first place, Pedersen in second. Who is going to be the winner of the stage? Both of them will fight to the absolute line to get the most time on their competitors. Tomorrow, it's a sprint stage, but on Saturday, we have that time trial, and you need a buffer on the absolute specialist. Sadly, we lost Søren Varenskjold due to a mechanical, but look at the fight there in Mads Pedersen, trying to stay on the wheel of the better climber of the two, Matthias Skelmose, the man who, of course, won the Tour of Switzerland, had a couple of top 10 placings in the Tour de France as well, and also just outside of the top 10 in Glasgow. He's still glancing over his shoulder. He's waiting for Mads Pedersen. Yeah. Looks like he might want to give the win. I don't know, but Pedersen is completely spent now. Yeah, Skelmose is still glancing over his shoulder, Brian.
Come on, Mads. Come on, get up there. Come on. He doesn't want to put too much time into it.
Mads Pedersen absolutely spent there on the final meters of the Kidderway, and this is a false flat final 300 meters to the line. Matthias Skelmose is going for the stage win and the leader's jersey, but Mads Pedersen got himself into a fantastic place as well to go for the overall win. Both of them could still win it on Saturday, especially since Mads Pedersen could go for some bonus seconds tomorrow in the sprint, but he looks absolutely spent. He's the one who attacked first, Mads Pedersen, and then he still had his teammate behind. A thank you to the Lord for Matthias Skelmose. He's the winner of stage 3 and he has the leader's jersey. And a big round of applause as well for Mads Pedersen, who is the absolute animator of today's stage. What a ride by the former world champion.
And so the next question is, are we going to see another Dane cross the line of 1, 2, 3? I think that was the right thing to do. Just the strongest man, and it was him, is going to win. Danish champion and all that, takes the leader's jersey, and it does look as if they're going to get a 1, 2, 3 for Denmark.
There he is, Magnus Kort, on his way to a third place on the third stage. The man with the moustache, followed by Nicolas Conchi in 4. Good result there for the Italian. And these people there, they can't believe their luck with the stage winner just right in front of them. And some good tough action there as well from Matthias Skelmose. Look at that. A little strand of hair trying to break loose from the aero helmet. With a big, big smile on the face of Mads Pedersen as well. Curious to see what will happen on Saturday when these two take on each other in the time trial. I believe in Mads Pedersen. Of course, Skelmose had a good time trial in the Tour de France, but that was a pretty much uphill final 3 kilometers. Good result there from Tom Squinch as well. Is that Bernard? Then he abandoned the race. Well, a great, great stage with 2 teammates on the top spots on the podium today. And a new leader. Look at that. The Danish national flag and Mads helping. This is stuff. This is great stuff.
Can you bring my recovery shaking bus?
around, but I think it's going to be better because it's long.
Pick up. Also my phone, please. It's in my backpack.
Phone and recovery shake is on the wish list there. Yeah, and this is a man who got beaten by a flat tyre. I do believe, Brian, that he wouldn't have kept up with Skelmose and Peterson, but being taken out by a flat tyre is never great to see.
No, you don't want that, and you know he would have been worked over, but he would have still possibly been in top 10.
Look at the time differences. Skelmose at 10 seconds on Peterson, Magnus Kort, Konchim Vermeers, Kamp, Tom Squinch, Tobias Svarre. Great result there for the youngster Kodo Quick. Valgren and Christian Sparalje, but that's a minute and 15 seconds down already, and that means that that will also go for Søren Werenskjold. Look at these two, how popular they are. On their way to the podium. I think Pedersen will take over the lead in the points classification. With 15 points, will bring him up to 33. We didn't have Werenskjold nor Jakobsen, so he takes over the points. We have Nikolaj Pedersen as our king of the mountains, and when it comes to best young rider, we'll have to see. It might actually be Tobias Svarre, the man who got 8th today on the stage. He's just only 19, very promising young rider from Denmark of the Kodo Quick team. Here we are with our provisional GC. Skelmose and Peterson can't be right. It's still 10 seconds because the bonus seconds have not been taken into account then. Kort, Konchi, Vermeers, Kamp, Squinch, Sparalje, Brent van Moer and Jakub Kaczmarek in 10th place. Wow, that's a cool bridge. So let's have a look at the highlights of today's stage. "209 kilometers today between Vejen and Vejle. Longest stage of the race. We had a breakaway of 7 riders with James Fouché, Wessel Krul and 5 Danish riders. Jeppe Askov, Nikolaj Pedersen, Oscar Blom, Nikolaj Mengel and Rasmus Pedersen. And in the breakaway, it was mainly a battle for the points for the King of the Hills classification, with Wessel Krul, Nikolaj Pedersen and also Jeppe Askov Pallesen quite high up in that classification before today, having been in the breakaway on previous days. This man, racing for a Polish team, looks very confident in taking the 12 points on the first time up the Golfbakken. Were it not for Nikolaj Pedersen, who went for a really big sprint and took away the 12 points. Our breakaway is then down to 4 riders with Fouché, Askov, Pedersen and Mengel. And the other riders are dropped. But yeah, only 48 kilometers out from the finish line. It's already over for our breakaway. They do pick up the points at the second King of the Mountains up the Golfbakken. And then 47 kilometers from the line, we have the first attack by Mads Pedersen, quickly followed by Søren Werenskjold and Matthias Breinhoy, the local rider. He was born and grew up in Vejle of the Leopard team. So first attack already 47 kilometers out. He has got a few teammates behind, with Tom Squinch and most notably the Danish national champion Matthias Skelmose. Squinch is in that group at the back. They try to bridge across, but they will not make it eventually. So that means that we have a little group there. Martin Svricek is also part of this group, who was 3rd at the Under-23 World Championships. Lucas Eriksson, Alexander Kamp, 2 teammates. We have Magnus Kort, Werenskjold, Florian Vermeers, Konchi and Skelmose, and another attack there by Mads Pedersen. And then this moment, 23 kilometers, and they're looking at each other. Eriksson he's not going to do it. Werenskjold possibly can't. And then Werenskjold also has that flat tire not long after this moment. This is the penultimate time up the Kiddesweg. The super steep climb, just a few hundred meters from the actual finish line. In the final lap, Matthias Skelmoser bridges across to his teammate, who was a little bit waiting for him. And then they continued the final 7 kilometers together. Two teammates, it's not something that we see all too often in men's racing. We see it all the time with SD Worx, of course, in the women's peloton. But this is a nice 1-2. The two Danish riders on the team of Lidl Trek. But on the Kiddesweg, on that steep climb, it was Matthias Skelmoser stronger than his teammates. Going all out because we have that time trial coming up on Saturday. But both celebrate to the line. Everybody happy. We have the Danish champion as our new race leader. And Mads Pedersen as his runner-up, the new points leader as well. Tomorrow we go again with a stage to Vaksfjord, which is absolutely suited to the sprinters. No more demanding finish circuits. And then a time trial on Saturday to finish it off here in Denmark.